Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Nile.
And I'm Kyle. And Nile, I've got a fucking bone to pick.
Okay.
This is Kyle's bone to pick corner.
You got to pick that bone clean like a good old chicken wang. What you got?
On my way here, and I think you can attest to this. What?
Nothing. I'm just in my head. I have an idea of where you're going.
Of my bone picking?
What bone you're gonna pick? But we'll see.
On my way here to record, in your studio, which loving the new setup, by the way.
We moved into a full-on isolated control room with it's like it's about a $500,000 complex. So I probably notice a big change in audio quality here.
Yeah, you will notice the change in audio quality. It's going up, up, up.
We switched from phallic to yonic microphones.
Yeah, before we started the show, I was talking about the phallic nature of the microphone, and Nile did say that he would be the first to invent the yonic microphone. And no, but that's not what my bone to pick.
No, what's your
about.
bone to pick?
My bone to pick is about something far more interesting
and more important.
On my way over here, I fucking. There is a guy in front of me, right? And you can attest to the fact that there are a million devastating potholes around every road out at my apartment. And a guy full on.
Oh, look at this dipshit. This dipshit drives over the little barrier between the two parking lots because he can't come into the.
This is happening in
real time. So outside of our apartment, there are kind of two there's like our parking lot, and then there's one that goes to the building that faces us perpendicularly. And for some reason, there's this big ass truck that refuses to use the actual entrance to our parking lot and always just goes over the fucking barrier between the two, the grass, like concrete grass barrier, and does it all the time.
That's why there's always giant like tire.
There's always massive tire treads through that area.
Fucking parking speed run 100%, no skips or one skip.
I've isolated the person that does that shit here, and I don't know why, but it's the dumbest and funniest thing to me.
I feel like everybody will proclaim to have the worst drivers in the town that they live in, but Indianapolis has some of the worst drivers I've ever fucking seen.
Yeah.
And today...
Oh, yeah, back to your
Well,
thing.
I don't know if this makes me a bad driver necessarily, but it did make me, like, angry that, like, hey, why are these potholes here weeks later?
Yeah.
This is just going to be a pothole rant episode. I hope that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, well, that was what our topic is this week. It's actually potholes.
Well,
so
this guy full on gets into a right turn lane. And I pass him. And as I pass him, he lays into his horn. And that's when I hit the potholes that he was trying to avoid by getting in the right turn lane. And I was like, oh, okay, he wasn't actually getting into the right turn lane. So the point is, that guy was extremely angry at me on the way over here. And that's my bone to pick is clean up your fucking streets, Indianapolis. I know we have the money.
No, I wouldn't think that's what makes you a bad driver. What makes you a bad driver is playing Pokemon Go while driving.
I don't do that.
No?
Anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you're not a bad driver anymore.
There was a time where I would go into a neighborhood and I would slow down and be like, oh, there's like a little pipple up here. I would.
And by neighborhood, you mean Starbucks?
Sure.
Or most major parking lots.
Well, you didn't see the neighborhood one.
Okay. Yeah.
So, anyways, Jesus Christ. I drove here.
Doing a little roasty roast before we get going.
I don't think that I did the wrong thing there.
No, I don't
But
think he did either. The guy should have signaled that he was getting back into the lane. That was just a pothole. Like, there more signaling should have happened than it probably did. But
nobody signals too. I'm about to turn this into a stand-up bit,
yeah,
I think.
yeah. Does this car? Hey, does that car come with turn signals? Why don't you use them? You know,
I
does
can,
they come
oh
on
my
that model?
god. It's oh my god. Hey, people, please fucking drive like a human being, please. For the love of God.
Hey
I
guys,
can't take
what
it
grinds
anymore.
your gears when it comes
Yeah.
to what bone do you have to
E-
pick with drivers in your town?
Please email itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Bone to pick, what grinds your gears, and specifically start laying into driving. Now, I do believe we have an email.
Oh, okay.
And let me pull that up.
I totally missed this one.
Yeah, this one says, "Hey all, this is Bree here. I know you guys are really into trading card games, so I was super curious if y'all have heard of MetaZoo. It's basically a cryptid trading card game. I genuinely don't know the rules behind it. I've just been collecting cards to collect cards, but they have a Mothman card, Fresno Nightcrawlers, a bunch of other popular cryptids, even weird kind of niche ones like the Cactus Cat or even Shadow People. They're kind of just Pokemon cards, but with cryptids, and I feel like you'd both enjoy it. Only downside is they're kind of rare, but they crop up on occasion at card stores. Keep it weird, y'all. Bree. Bree, I have heard of this.
Yeah, I think I've seen these around when I was. So there was a time that I was researching these little like a kind of weird cryptid. I think it was maybe the barber guy that I forget his fucking name.
Oh, Sweeney Todd?
Yeah, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. No, there was the Phantom Barber or whatever the fuck of like some random town in like North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
West Virginia. I don't remember what the fuck it was. But there was like a series of like these little tiny like 1 inch like little like figures
Yeah.
things of a bunch of different things, and like they when I was looking up those, I think I came across MetaZoo as well, because like I was looking up just like where do cryptids show up in like trading card games and action figures and
Mhm.
shit like that. So I think that's where I heard about MetaZoo. I honestly forgot about it, so this reminded me, and I'll probably have to Google it later.
I would love to get cards from that. I remember when I looked into it, they were like really weirdly expensive.
Mm.
But the other day, I was on my the dark web section where I buy all my Magic the Gathering cards,
Yeah.
and that storefront now had a section for MetaZoo. So maybe I can get. Maybe it's popular enough now that there's an affordable copy of it.
Yeah, maybe you can get that. Maybe you can get into that.
Sounds fun.
Hey, if we can get a box of MetaZoo and we can
That
open
would
it
be
on
sick.
stream,
I would love it. I would love that. I'll
that'd
look
be
into
great.
it.
That'd be great.
Anyways, I have derailed your
No, you're good.
episode long enough. What are we talking about this week?
Kyle, today we're gonna take a trip.
Okay.
And,
In our car over the
yeah, we can get there
potholes
by
and-
car. We're taking a trip to Washington,
okay
and we're gonna hang out in a place now known as Ape Canyon.
Ape Canyon.
Ape Canyon.
Wow, I felt the spirit of Garrett move through me when you said that name.
I really like. If I had gotten this episode together in enough time, I probably would have tried to get Garrett involved in this episode, because it is anything that's ape adjacent.
Apes, chimps, Garrett loves.
Apes, chimps, and military vehicles. If you involve any of those things, you kind of need to at least give Garrett like, you have to at least like give him the chance. And so I fucked up on this one. I'm sorry, Garrett. We'll get you in on something here soon.
If all you have to do to get an instant laugh or at least a chuckle out of Garrett is to reference a random chimp event,
Especially a random chimp attack.
yeah,
He loves
he loves it. He loves that shit. He's kind of like Joe Rogan in that way.
So it's the only way Garrett and Joe Rogan are anything
That's
alike,
true.
other than they both have appeared on podcasts. So why I'm taking you to Chimp Canyon? Sorry, Ape Canyon. gotta not get derailed by
You can call it
Garrett's.
Chimp Canyon.
But it's not what it's called.
Fair,
like
fair.
it is actually Ape Canyon, and the reason it's called Ape Canyon is because there were some notable Bigfoot encounters in Ape Canyon.
Excellent.
So we are going to the main one. There are kind of two notable ones. The first one is in 1924, and which I'm doing this specifically because I like looking at super old Bigfoot stuff, because I feel like once Bigfoot became super well known and super popularized, like the sightings became so homogenous
Mm-hmm.
and so like oh, I heard this thing that I know about from Bigfoot, doing Bigfoot research in the woods, therefore I heard Bigfoot. And I like old cryptid sightings because they tend to be it's the same with UFO
I was gonna say
sightings.
that's exactly how I feel about UFO sightings. There are multiple decades where you get a lot more unique encounters, and then it all just starts to blend together as time goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are going to be talking about Fred Beck and his other kind of compatriots and their Sasquatch attack in 1924 in Ape
Attack.
Canyon. Yes. So Fred Beck was a prospector back in 1924 in the summer. He was out with four other people. They're all trying to find this specific place to like find gold in Washington.
Now, I'm really stupid. Let me
Okay.
preface that with that first, but for some reason my brain just was like prospecting is a 19th century thing. After 1899, all prospectors disappeared. So it is kind of shocking to hear 1924 because my brain is fucked up.
Yeah. Now we'll get more into why they were looking in this specific area later, because there's a rather fun twist to this that we'll get to in after the actual story. Um, but yeah, these are this is, I mean, the 1920s. The Wild West was like the 1890s to like 1900. Like we're not that far out of it, especially in the West.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's like my brain though is just like, oh, the California Gold Rush. That's prospecting. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So this this just happened to kind of coincide a little bit later.
Sure.
So they went out to a Washington mountain range near Mount St. Helens,
Famous mountain.
that has since become called Ape Canyon, but that's kind of where we're starting here. The group had been prospecting for about 6 years in the area around this kind of canyon area, and they had found various tracks in that time that measured about 19 inches, which hey, big feet,
That's pretty
pretty big.
big.
They kept finding these by creek beds and springs, and they noticed that these didn't seem to be created by any creature that they see regularly. Like there wasn't an obvious candidate for these footprints.
By creeks and springs, you say? Get the missing
I
411 guy
know
on the phone.
this is very like there's you could totally turn this into missing 411. Especially the second story we're going to talk about is very much just like a possible missing 411 case.
I wonder if it's
So
been kind of wrapped up into that canon.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Hmm.
So they were they ended up building this kind of log cabin where they're out in the woods where they were prospecting and looking for gold. Um, and one night they were kind of hanging out, and they started to hear these strange sounds around them, a mixture of whistling and thumping, like something was kind of hitting its chest, you know?
Yeah.
And this continued every night for a week.
Okay. Okay.
So like it would go away after the evening, and wouldn't happen during the day. It was only in the evening when they were in this log cabin they would hear those noises every single night for a whole week.
Maybe the creature just has trouble whistling and it needs to pump its chest to get the
It
airflow out
What you don't
properly.
realize is that Bigfoot chests, Sasquatch chests work like an accordion, and you need to
Yeah,
kind of
right.
like you do the bellows,
Yeah, yeah.
So they pound their chests to get the air out so they can whistle.
Little known Bigfoot fact.
Little known Bigfoot fact. So one day, Fred, along with one of his friends, who in the main accounts of this is given the pseudonym Hank. I don't know why Fred is the only one that has like is actually stated in this account. He's the one that is kind of the main person that people reference for this thing, but there were four other people there, none of which are named.
Hmm.
They're going to get water from a nearby spring, and it was there that Hank spotted a hairy humanoid creature about 7 feet tall with blackish brown hair that was behind a pine tree on the other side of this kind of small canyon that they were getting water from. Hank raised his rifle and fired, and he was about 100 yards away from the creature. And Fred Beck claimed to see bark flying from the pine tree that the creature was hiding behind, but they don't know for sure if they actually hit the thing.
I will never understand that being your first response to seeing an ape creature. You
Yeah,
just
like
shoot at it.
especially from that distance,
Right.
like if some I could see a kind of fight or flight response if you're like close
If it
by
was near
something.
you, but this is across a canyon.
Yes. So
I
they are like 100 yards away, a full football field,
Wow,
end
interesting
zone to end
critter.
zone.
I gotta kill that thing.
It's prospector's way. So the animal then disappeared down the canyon side. He continued to kind of shoot at it, and none of them seemed to hit him. So they eventually just started continuing their quest of getting water and brought it back and told the rest of the group this kind of bizarre story of this weird ape creature that they had seen. They all kind of unanimously agreed to head home, but they figured they would wait until the next day because it's you don't want to head back at night, that kind of stuff. So they decided to spend the night in the cabin one more night. Now, eventually, they all fell asleep. Nightfall came, and then around midnight, a tremendous thud hit the cabin, and everyone was startled awake. Hank was on the floor, covered in a bunch of like the kind of bark from the tree that came from the impact, and enough had been knocked loose that there was now like little gaps in the logs that made up the
Mm.
cabin, and they're able to kind of peer out in between the logs of this cabin to try to see outside. They saw three ape-like creatures,
Oh, shit.
that seemed to be like the ones that they had seen at the creek earlier that day. They were These creatures were called mountain devils by Hank in the original accounts of this story. And they started to hurl rocks at the cabin and even tried to break through
Uh,
the door at the front.
there's the classic Bigfoot maneuver.
Yep.
If you're gonna shoot at them, I think that you deserve a Bigfoot rock tossed at you.
Yeah, if you're gonna shoot a bullet, they can throw a rock. Like
I
that.
agree.
That isn't even full on quid pro quo. You know.
Right.
So that the door was braced with like a pole, so they weren't able to quite get in. But at one point, it was opened enough, the door was ajar enough that a hairy arm reached through the gap and grabbed an axe by its
Oh
handle.
shit.
But the crack wasn't big enough for the axe to actually get taken out. So they weren't able. The Sasquatch wasn't able to get armed.
Oh my god.
In
Can
this
you
attack.
imagine?
This is the pivotal moment in this entire scene. If this ape had gotten an axe, all of these prospectors would have been dead. Just gonna say that right
Yeah,
now.
you would have fucking Jack Torranced them.
Yeah, and honestly, it probably would have been their fault.
Yeah.
It was really Hank's fault.
You leave the axe by the door, Squatch will procure.
This is why you leave the axe by the bedside, not by
Axe
the
at a
door.
bedside, you're in the clear, Clyde. I don't know. I could.
Fred and Hank are the only names we have here,
It's
Kyle.
a
Come on.
nickname that I have created for this scenario.
It's okay. Hank's not a real name either, so you can call
Right.
him Clyde. Maybe his real name was Clyde. So Fred and Hank began to fire because I guess they were less like freaked out by this. Like they were more ready to shoot.
Yeah.
While the rest kind of gripped their rifles and hung out in a corner, kind of scared, of course. And then eventually the two stopped shooting once the creatures started to quiet down. And
And then they heard a gun cock noise outside.
yeah,
Just while I'm thinking of arming Sasquatch. Sorry.
yeah, they
Yeah.
then basically were they. I think they actually said something along the lines of, "If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, and we'll go home in the morning." But the attack kind of persisted throughout the night until about sunrise. In some minor way, it wasn't like the axe was the big thing, kind of the big climax of it,
Mhm.
but the kind of noises and
It,
rocks
like-
and everything continued until
Yeah.
sunrise.
They just decided to hang around the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
And so once the sun was up enough that they felt safe to kind of try to head home, they came out of the cabin, which had now been had been ravaged, like was fucked up because of all of the stuff thrown at it and beating on it and everything throughout the night. And Fred, as they started to kind of gather all their stuff, Fred noticed one of the mountain devils about 80 yards away on the edge of what is now Ape Canyon. He fired his rifle and this time
Jesus.
actually hit it.
Okay.
So the animal collapsed and tumbled down the canyon
Oh,
into a gorge
no.
and fell 400 feet
Oh, Jesus
into the
Christ.
gorge. And so at this point, the group figured that was as good a time as any to get the fuck out of there. So they all took everything they could that they could easily, quickly fit in their pack, like their packs, probably leaving quite a bit of stuff behind, and effectively just fucking ran out of
Booked it.
there.
Yeah. Jesus.
And that is the main story of the the Sasquatch attack of Ape Canyon.
That is so funny. That reminds me of a story of not a story, of a thing that happened to me as a kid where I went out into the mountains with my family in
Uh-huh.
Colorado, and it's like midnight and it's pitch black, and like we basically had two cabins rented out because we had like a huge family thing going on up there.
Mhm.
And there was basically a cabin where me and like my cousins were all staying because we were all,
The youth
younger.
cabin.
No, just like a cabin that like all the kids could stay in, and kids being anybody between the age of like 8 to like
Yeah.
30. They weren't that old. It had to have been like in the mid 20s. But anyways, I had to have been, I don't know, 14, 15. I don't know how old I was.
So not youths, just 8 to 20 some year olds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I I mean, I don't know. That's the way the family kind of looked at it, cuz then there was a cabin where like all the parents went and stayed,
Yeah.
and maybe I was younger than 14. I don't remember, but um I like I think I think the way it went down is one of my cousins got up and was like, "Oh, I think I hear something outside,"
Mhm.
or something, or like they disappeared in the middle of the night,
Mhm.
and like I woke up and there was like a growling and a smashing on the side of the cabin.
Okay.
And I'm freaking out. And me and like my younger cousins, we're all like freaking the fuck out.
Mhm.
Like trying, like, how do we need to get our pet? Like, and this went on for a while. Like, we were like freaking out. The short version of the story is my cousin snuck out and started like banging on the cabin and making noises and trying to scare us. And
Yeah.
but in that moment, I thought either a bear or Sasquatch was coming to murder me.
That I mean, it's wild how many Sasquatch attacks are probably attacks, quote unquote, are probably just people playing pranks,
Fucking around.
including possibly this one.
Oh, good.
Supposedly there was like a group of like, it states YMCA, but I honestly don't know how old that is. The YMCA really that old?
I think it's a pretty old thing, right?
Okay.
The Young Motherfuckers Christian
Yeah.
Association.
So supposedly there was a youth group that was possibly nearby at the time, and they believe that at some point the youth group might have been the
Destroyed?
Ones. Yeah, no,
Oh.
just fucking. They went full on Dyatlov Pass. No, it's supposedly the youth group maybe were just pranking these people and throwing rocks at their cabin and stuff.
Okay.
But that is not what Fred Beck thinks happened.
Right. He thinks a large hairy ape man was fucking with them.
Yes, but
Or either that or he
also
smoked a youth group
okay.
member.
So
Oh shit. Okay.
No, not
Oh, okay.
the Fred Beck has okay, so what I told you already is like the original kind of most bare bones account of what happened. If you're just like, okay, this is a Sasquatch attack, this is kind of the local like legend. It's since been like kind of expanded upon and retold and
Okay.
everything over time. Including points where like, the rocks actually like came in the cabin and knocked various people out, and like Fred Beck says he was definitely not knocked out by a rock thrown by a Sasquatch, but that's neither here nor there. But then there was a kind of a turn in things as Fred Beck started to tell more about the account over the years. And it basically came to be known that Fred Beck believes that Bigfoot are supernatural creatures,
Oh.
and that is why you will never be able to find the body of the one that he killed.
Okay, it's the katana rule at Stardust Ranch where you slice them, but then their bodies vanish.
Yeah. So I this next I feel like I have to just kind of go directly from the source here, because we kind of retcon a lot like certain things into this story in a way that I think is really interesting.
Just over time as he tells it.
Yes. Over time, he would kind of start to add some things, specifically that um, back in 1922,
That's
he
4 years previously,
2
right?
years.
2 years.
1924
24.
was
Sorry, I
the
thought I was
event.
thinking 26.
They were led to this specific point where they were going to go prospect in 24 by a spiritual being. He says it was a large Native American dressed in buckskin who appeared to him and the people he was prospecting with and talked to them. He says that he was the picture of stateliness itself. He never told us his name, but we always called him the Great Spirit. He would say
Oh,
he was quoted,
jeez.
the Native American was quoted as saying, "The Great Spirit is above me. We are all of the Great Spirit if we listen when the Great Spirit talks." And then at some point they started to see these other beings, and so this whole thing started to take a very spiritual, supernatural bent to things, to the point where basically now Fred Beck believes that Bigfoots, Sasquatches, etc., are effectively interdimensional beings.
Okay. Okay. This is also giving me some Skinwalker vibes.
A little bit, yeah. There is definitely some of that, and so let's get into some of this because I think it's interesting. Um, they were then visited by another spiritual being who was more in the role of a quote unquote comforting friend. And it was a woman, I believe another Native American woman, and they basically she suggested that the party later name their mine after her so that the mining claim would bear her name and that would make it more possible to get gold from it.
Why would a grand spiritual being guide a couple of fucking prospectors to go find gold? I dare to ask.
I truly do not know.
You don't
But
have an answer. He doesn't give an answer to that. He's
the
just like, this spirit was like, hey, I know the best spot for gold. You're gonna love this.
yeah, the
That's
the
not very godlike to me.
well, they're not
Or
gods, they're just
spirit like,
spiritual beings.
whatever.
The original Native American told them that there would be this white arrow in front of them, and as long as they would follow it, the, as long as they could see it, they could follow it to this mine that would give them riches.
Mm.
However, he does say because of like some of how they dealt with things, they eventually got quote unquote cursed by the spirit guide. And so he says, because you have cursed the spirit leading you, you will be shown where there is gold, but it is not given to you. So they fucked up. And even though they got the claim to this mine,
Wha-
they weren't able to
No.
get the gold in it.
How did they fuck up though? Like, what did they do?
Basically, when they were following this white arrow for about 4 days, eventually one of the prospectors that was with them started to lose patience and started like yelling at the spirit guide and being just not helpful, like being kind of a dick.
Just
Basically,
fucking it all
he
up.
he lost his patience and was like, "Come on, this is fucking ridiculous," that kind of shit.
I could believe
And
that.
so the spirit guide turned on them,
Wh-
and the whole thing became cursed.
Now, okay. I'm
Yes.
sorry if I ever jump to another thing that you're gonna get to, but like, are any of the guys that he did this with able to corroborate this story?
Well, the 4 other people involved in this were not named. So
Mm,
I don't know if there are any accounts from those people. As
okay.
far as I know, basically all of the accounts of this story come from either Fred Beck or people that like have learned of it from people who learned of it from Fred Beck. Like that kind of thing. Like this is all from a pretty specific source, and Fred Beck actually like wrote books eventually
Oh
about all this
Jesus.
stuff. So like he
The-
became kind of a he started to be a figure in
Oh,
this stuff.
this fucking reminds me. I'm not gonna get the story totally right, but it's there's around a similar time,
Mhm.
there was this guy who like got in the news for like saying like man can return to the wilderness and survive, like we need to shed our, and he like went into the woods and like everything got fucked up. I think at one point he straight up like steals a pie off a windowsill type shit. Like
Okay.
he never actually like commits to the thing that he said he was gonna do, and he comes back out and he gets all this fame and attention and all this shit. It reminds me of that a little bit, in a way.
Yeah, I mean it's very like there's like these 2 Native American like spirit guide things. Like this is the kind of stuff that like white people want to have happen to
Right,
them.
right,
You
right.
know,
Exactly.
it's like, yeah, it's
This guy
it's
in
Disney-fied in
Yeah,
a way.
this guy would be talking about how he's like 1/8 Cherokee or whatever today,
Yeah,
like
and
that.
that's why the spirit guides met. Yeah, like it's kind of ridiculous. But um, when Beck is asked about why he believes that the Sasquatches are some form of spirit or like interdimensional being, he basically cites evidence for his theory being that they found a series of footprints on a sandbar in a creek, and this sandbar was like an acre in size. It was very large, and his friends discovered two large footprints 4 inches deep, and they were the only tracks on the entire sandbar.
Well, that settles it.
And so that they basically, it would have required for these to be the only tracks on that sandbar for the creature to have a stride of about 160 feet, or they got brushed away or whatever. But they state no human being could have made these tracks, and there's only one way they could be made. Something dropped from the sky and went back up.
Okay. Or this didn't happen. I don't know. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Beck takes to calling these things abominable snowmen,
Well,
as opposed
that's
to
interesting.
Sasquatches. Yeah.
Right. Well, so I have I'm noticing something about that term there. And about I think the sort of so snowmen, right? Like
Mhm.
was snow notable at this like
I mean, they're around Mount St. Helens. I don't think it's a particularly like they weren't particularly high up for this stuff, so I wouldn't think it's super snowy. And they happen during the summer.
that's my confusion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it on and like they even said they're like 7 feet tall, brownish, blackish, like brownish blackish fur, um, and not like abominable snowmen. I mean they're not Yeti. Like all of these terms get used kind of interchangeably, but also have some deviations amongst them that only certain people observe. Because some people use Bigfoot and Sasquatch interchangeably.
Right.
Other people say that big feet are a subcategory of Sasquatch, and I
Mhm.
think even other people will say that almost the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like Yeti and abominable snowmen, and like Yeti typically is in like is like in the like what like the Russian states, like it's like
Right.
in
It's
Siberian shit,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's
Well, I don't know. It just kind of reads like this guy picked up a book of like weird wildlife things and like saw the first thing he turned to was snowmen and it's like I don't know. Just think about it, I guess, Frank or whatever your name is.
Fred.
Fred. Think about it next time.
Yeah.
Look at what's contained in the name Snowman and think about the story you're telling. That's all.
Well, he does think a lot about the story he's telling because he says that these beings come from a lower plane of reality than our own.
I didn't mean think about it like that.
They says that um, when vibrations are at the proper frequency,
Oh.
these beings can pass from one plane to another and appear as physical beings.
Oh my
However,
god.
they're not animal spirits, but they're also not human. They fall in between those things.
I cannot believe we're doing the interdimensional vibrant vibration thing this early.
Yeah. Well, this is like him later in
Later
life
on,
talking about this
oh,
stuff.
okay.
So I think a lot of this stuff comes out in like the
After the new age movement gets,
60s,
yeah, that makes sense.
I
Actually,
think.
okay.
And because I think he has like a book in like 1964 or something like that.
Because I don't see the vibrational energy stuff until like at the late 50s at the
No,
earliest.
and that's the weird thing about this whole thing is like the story that I told you at the beginning of this episode is the kind of canonized. This is the if you go there's like literally like bigfootencounters.org or some shit, and under the classics tab
This is
there is that basically that story that I told you that's just these prospectors went out, Bigfoot attack, like 3 creatures attacked all through the night. They shot one, body rolled into the canyon, and they ran away.
and then he decides to jump the shark a couple decades later.
Yeah, it really feels that way. It's like, oh, like the initial boom of the interest in Bigfoot went away, so now I'm gonna add some fucking
Yeah, no,
some good vibrations
that's
to it.
actually, I think, pretty good reading on it. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know, but go ahead.
Yeah. So these are the quote unquote missing link in consciousness between apes and humans. And the fact that these creatures have this metaphysical nature explains why there's no physical remains of Bigfoot slash Sasquatch slash abominable snowmen that have been or ever will be found. So he says that most theories on these creatures is that they are material beings hiding in caves and hanging out on mountains and forests, all that kind of stuff. And due to just like law of probability, eventually we would find one of their bodies or at least some sort of like skeleton, that kind of stuff, just because physical beings die. And so, due to just laws of probability, these beings, because they have to exist in his mind, because he was attacked by one, there are three, they have to be metaphysical in nature because that is why we've never been able to find any evidence of them
Okay.
outside of these footprints when they get dropped down and then sucked back up into the, well, actually into the lower plane of existence. So it's not
Uh,
up, it's like, yeah.
People really love that term metaphysical with this stuff, even though I'm not sure they know what it means.
Well, that's that. Okay, I think we've talked about this
We
before.
we
But
have.
anytime I hear the phrase like they're basically they're dumber, therefore they are in a lower plane of existence. It's like you've got to like expand your mind to a higher plane of consciousness, which basically means you have to be smarter. I don't think that's how that works.
No, I think we have kind of disproven that one for a while now.
Yeah, that
Or it was never that was never the case, but nonetheless, these people kind of treat it as such for some reason.
yeah.
Uh, which, like, I guess that's why you ultimately get into people who, like, when they talk about higher elevations of consciousness, it's all about energy instead of like actual like mental faculties.
Yeah.
So,
But I
I
mean,
don't know.
hey, IQ's bullshit too. Like,
Sure,
it's
yeah.
all of that shit is
Totally.
nonsense, and it's just us trying to find ways to quantify why we're better than other people.
Yeah.
But like, I think there is something to like being like open and centered and stuff. Like,
Oh, sure.
in a kind of like in a way of like being mindful of how you're acting and thinking and being. But I don't think it's a thing of higher and lower vibrational energies in terms of like quantifying your aptitude of like being smart or like capable of things. That feels very weird
Or you
to
could
me.
just pop on down to the metaphysical store and buy yourself a couple crystals and
Yeah.
see if that does something for you.
Yep. So yeah, that's where he kind of he gets really into some of this kind of stuff. So he let me just read. This is from I think his book. So when reading of evolution, we have read many times conjecture about the missing link between man and the anthropoid ape. The snowmen are a missing link in consciousness, neither animal nor human. They are very close to our dimension and yet are a part of one lower. Could they be the missing link man has been so long searching for? The answer to these questions cannot be answered by expeditions. It can only come by man knowing more about his true self and more about the universe in which he dwells. Science has reached near perfection in material knowledge, but has reached the borderland through which no finite intellect can pass. All life can be studied, but man will have to look into himself to tap a spiritual power and realize the spiritual laws and reason within or with a spiritual mind. Man will have to break the little material shell he has around himself, which says this far you can only go and there is nothing more. What is outside that shell is pure life, and it is even above and of a higher order than material life. Though material and spiritual life would work in harmony if we would let it work. You get
Okay.
all that?
Okay. What was this guy smoking?
Probably. Let's see. In the '60s, you're probably.
Is this guy on the reefer drugs?
I mean, Washington's kind of been. They're pretty quick to legalize it. Not in the 1960s, but it like this is really. You hear so much of this stuff in that era of like people experimenting with consciousness and like either through drugs or through like meditation and basically trying to like take quote unquote, I say this in a very broad general white way, Eastern
No,
mysticism and
absolutely.
everything
You're
and Eastern spirituality and consume it into our
100%.
understanding of things.
100%. Well, honestly, at the same time, I think probably not genuinely understanding it.
Oh yeah, no.
And I don't know. It's just like it also operates so closely to the like conspiracy principle of like me. I'm the hero of this story.
Yeah.
Of like this guy is out there proclaiming like I know we know this mystery's out there, and I know how we get to solve it. But we like literally him saying like the only way we can solve this is through whatever. He's got some definition in mind of what you must do, but he's doing this vague mysticism shit. And I don't know. It's I think kind of a little bit of this ego leaking out into this shit. Like
Well, if you want to have a little more certainty in that theory,
oh
let me just
fuck yeah.
continue on here for a second. So
Okay,
this is
okay.
from another passage. I have lived this experience with abominable snowmen. I have encountered them on the slopes of Mount St. Helens. I have looked deep into myself to tell you of their nature. I have had both the earthly experience of encountering them by Ape Canyon and the spiritual experience of knowing and telling what they are. I have walked through the messy cliffs of Ape Canyon and seen a primeval loneliness, reminiscent of life as it must have been years ago. It like
Whew,
it's
boy.
very I have achieved spirituality and nirvana, and I can show you the way if you buy my
It's
book for 1995.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's we've been doing that for so fucking long now. It's
And that
insane.
is nothing against meditation or
No, I
spirituality in any way, shape, or form. It's
I
anti-grift.
I have enough faith in our listeners to understand the difference there in what we're talking about
Yeah.
100%. That it's frustrating to listen to this stuff. We're still doing this. We're
Yep.
still doing this and honestly, people are probably making more money off of the grift of like fake Eastern mysticism than they did back then.
Yeah.
Honestly, unless they were like selling to like John Lennon and those
Unless you
those
were
guys,
unless you were the Beatles like specific
then you're making a
hookup.
fucking killing.
Yeah. So let's jump forward about 25 years to the second kind of notable case in Ape Canyon. And that is the 1950 disappearance of one Jim Carter.
Ooh, this sounds familiar to me, but go ahead.
We might like I don't think we've specifically talked about this in like a missing 411.
This just seems like it could have been something that I ran into while researching Missing 411.
Fair. So Jim Carter was 32 with a 20-member climbing party from Seattle. He was accompanying them as like an expert, and they were going up Mount St. Helens in Washington in May of 1950. They got up the mountain all fine, but on the way down the mountain, he left the other climbers near a landmark called Dog's Head, which is at about 8,000 feet up the mountain. And he left them behind because he was an experienced skier and mountaineer. And he told the rest of the climbers that he would basically ski around to the next like bend and take pictures of the group as they skied down this area. So it's basically like, okay, I'll go down and prep for the photo op so you can have your skiing photo from Mount St. Helens. That's basically what he was doing.
Hmm.
So from here, Carter took off down the mountain in what was later found to be basically a wild, like seemingly a dash that indicated that he was being chased.
Oh boy.
He was quote unquote taking chances that no skier of his caliber would take unless something was terribly wrong or he was being pursued.
Jesus.
He jumped over 2 or 3 large crevasses and
Oh my
seemed to be
God.
going down the hill at a very, very, very high speed.
This does sound familiar.
And he just was not seen again. Like, and so
Ooh.
they sent various search and rescue crews out to try to find him. These large groups of people searched the mountain for weeks. Very experienced search and rescue teams were brought in, and Carter was not found, and no trace of him was found except for a discarded film box at the point where he had where he was going to take pictures.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. See, this is why I don't go skiing or snowboarding or
Yeah.
hiking or camping or
Out into the world.
Out into the world.
Yeah. So they eventually found some of Carter's tracks that went down like the actual side of Ape Canyon, like
Mhm.
the steep cliff of Ape Canyon. They see that he had been in such a hurry that he literally just went down almost a near vertical space.
Oh,
But they didn't find him at the bottom of the canyon. The tracks were then traced by plane towards the Eagle Creek Ranger Station before they disappeared into complete wilderness. And
Ooh.
as far as I found, The disappearance is still an unsolved mystery to this day.
Yikes. I mean, that's fucked up and scary.
Yep.
Um, but let me solve the mystery real quick. He was swallowed by nature. He was taken away by a natural force or a couple. I hate to say it, but that is a terrifying story
And that's the thing is like this gets linked as a Bigfoot thing because it happened in Ape
because of its
Canyon.
location. Yeah.
That maybe he was being pursued by an ape or something, or a Bigfoot or something.
And
Like,
then disemboweled and devoured by a pack of ape men.
or maybe he was so dumb that he descended to a lower plane of consciousness, like the ape-men, and was
He's like
then a
fucking-
metaphysical being.
He's like
You know?
fucking midair on one of the slopes, and he just goes dumb so hard that he just disappears.
Yeah. And one of the other reasons that it gets kind of linked with Bigfoot stuff is because of there's a guy that was doing search and rescue named Bob Lee, who was a member of the Seattle Mountain Search and Rescue Unit. He was an experienced mountaineer and, was a member of the Alpine Club, leader of a 1961 Himalayan expedition, all this stuff. One day they were out searching and he got cut off from the rest of the search and rescue team he was a part of. And he got the feeling that, quote unquote, somebody was watching me and there was something strange on the high slopes of the mountain. He described the search as the most eerie experience I have ever had. I could feel the hair on my neck standing up. It was eerie. I was unarmed except for my pickaxe. And believe me, I never let go of that. And that's really the end of it. Like, basically, there's no explicit Bigfoot in this case.
It's just because of the location of the weird shit.
Because of the location of the weird shit, because of this guy that says he felt like he was being watched, because of the seemingly that Carter was being chased in some way. People have taken to linking it to Bigfoot, and that's why I included it, because it's in the area and it felt like it's at least weird. It at least it feels like a missing 4-in-1 maybe.
Well, it's weird, and the thing is, when people decide to group these kinds of things into a UFO or a cryptid canon,
Yep.
say, the X cryptid got him or whatever, effectively what's happening is you're saying, your brain's saying, this is how I see it at least, your brain's saying it's easier to have an interesting answer than a big question mark. The question mark is an anxiety inducing thing. The big I don't know is scary. But the answer, even if it's an absurd one, is an answer.
Yeah. And I think that and also like when people are looking for things to like try to find evidence of whatever they believe in, whatever they're going for, a lot of times when you're dealing with stuff that is paranormal, supernatural, any of this kind of stuff, they will reach for anything that could possibly be linked to it, because you're kind of playing Calvin ball with the rules of reality anyway by just like trying to prove the existence of Bigfoot. That like people will search for this kind of stuff where something weird has happened, where there was because this could have been anything. It could have been a bear. It could have been a mountain lion. It could have been whatever the fuck. I don't know if mountain lions are in Washington.
It could have been taken under the snow in a shock avalanche.
Yeah. Like any of this stuff could have happened. But it came up while I was doing Bigfoot research stuff in this area enough that I was like,
might as well include it.
We'll include it.
Yeah. It's officially part of the canon now, though. Like you can't really help that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it is with some of this stuff. Like it's sort of like how Elisa Lam.
Yep.
Is like the disappearance of Elisa Lam, which I think was also a California thing. Or well, not also, but you know what I mean. It was in California. Look it up if you don't know. That is now essentially part of the paranormal canon.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think that that's the explanation for it at all. But officially, like, it's weird how events, especially events that deal with people who can no longer explain themselves, get pulled into the supernatural and paranormal canons, and I don't know. It's interesting, and it feels a little whack too, especially with something like Elisa Lam. I mean, a guy who died in the 1950s on a ski trip. Like, I feel like the time enough time has elapsed, but it is weird when you think about like Elisa Lamb was not that long ago. It's extremely unfortunate what happened to her, and now people are just like, well, clearly this was demons.
Yeah,
It's a weird way to go with it.
it is, and like I understand why questions like that get raised. It does seem kind of weird that Elisa Lamb is just like now a if you search like paranormal disappearance, like if you look into that stuff at all, it's on like every top 10
Everywhere,
list.
yeah.
When in reality, it's just like an unfortunate death.
Yeah, that has other factors that have nothing to do it's like the reality of it is probably much sadder
Yeah,
than the sort of interesting or entertaining explanation you're giving it, you know?
yeah.
So
Now there's not another story. There's just like one little other note that came up while I was doing research
okay.
that I thought was funny. Um, so the Ape Cave is reopened. As of May 2021, the Ape Cave is
Oh,
now available for tours again.
well, hell yeah.
There is a thing called Ape Cave at Mount St. Helens that is in this area, and it like gets kind of thrown in with a lot of this Bigfoot lore and stuff because it's named Ape Cave near Ape Canyon,
Right,
you
right.
know. So I figured I would at least like bring up the fact that it exists. It is the let's see, it is the third longest lava tube in North America at 2.5 miles. And it was discovered in 1947 by Lawrence Johnson, a logger, but only eventually explored a few years later by some scouts who lowered themselves into the area. And it was named after their sponsor, the St. Helens Apes, which was then named after the Bigfoot lore.
Their sponsor, Ape Vigoda.
Yeah,
Um,
but so this is like a thing that gets like brought up in like tours of the area and stuff, and they kind of like tie it in with with like the Sasquatch attack of 1924 because it's in the area named after ape.
Ape
It's Ape Cave.
I hear that they offer special tours where you can go on the random ape event tour where you go into the cave and you just travel long enough away and then the tour guide leaves you and they release a bunch of apes into the cave and what happens from there is up to you really and the apes.
In the tour, you can pay by a percentage of chance of ape attack. So, like, if you're willing to be mauled by an ape, it's actually a much cheaper tour. But if you want the safety of not being attacked by an ape, it does cost a little bit extra.
They're basically creating the world's first real life roguelike with apes in a cave.
Yeah, it's
You can
the ape protection racket
And yeah,
roguelike.
any items that you get inside the cave and you survive the cave experience, and then you can gain more ape bucks with which to lower the percent chance of an ape
Mhm.
attack. And you just keep going through, and hey, they're making a killing.
It really is very profitable. So I think that will lead us to our big question for the week.
Hit me.
And the thing that I like about this story is that it feels like a kind of like tower defense game of an ape
Okay,
of like a
roguelike,
Sasquatch attack.
tower defense. Okay.
Yeah. And so I want to know what is if you were in a log cabin beset by
Oh
Sasquatches,
my
what would be your
god.
defense strat to make it through the night?
But like thinking like a tower defense, like I have to set up like these sort of uh uh uh
Whether it's like traps or like if you were going to
like
do some
home
sort of
aloneing
manual
the
attack or something, like
okay.
what would be your strategy for surviving the night when you're besieged by
All right.
Bigfoots?
Well, first of all, I kind of love big feets.
Okay.
They're good critters. I'd prefer not to hurt them if I can help it.
Yeah.
This is going to be sort of an attempt at humane uh, ape man handling.
Okay.
So what I think I would do is I would set up massive slingshots,
Okay.
and I would put a nice berry and nut spread on those slingshots.
Land a little bit of bait there.
Yeah, and so the slingshot, of course, is going to have to somehow be like pressure activated.
Uh-huh.
So when the Sasquatch comes up and he's just like, "Oh my god, who left this here?" And they go and they take a couple berries and it just fucking launches them. Like,
So you're just gonna try to like launch Bigfoot across the fucking like across the Mount St. Helens forest.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if that doesn't work, because basically we're going to set up slingshots on the entire perimeter of the house, obviously. If that doesn't work, the secondary line of defense, um, and I'm trying to think humane here.
Okay.
and my brain is going to terribly violent places.
Yeah.
Um,
You picked kind of the harder route for this one.
yeah, maybe what we could do is we could have those leaf covered pits that you
Mhm.
can't see, but there's like a pit beneath it, and at the bottom of that pit is a bunch of packing peanuts.
Okay, so they just kind of fall
So they
down
just
and
fall down in the packing peanuts, and maybe you leave also some berries and nuts down there as
yeah,
well.
back in like 1920s packing peanuts, yeah.
They have
Yeah, you're
something
good.
similar to packing peanuts. Like they could
They
get
have crumpled up newspaper,
they've
you
got
know.
newspaper, they've got tufts of hair. They could like shear
So
various
you're gonna
animals.
shave your friends.
Yeah, or like, whatever animals I got on me.
Yeah.
Maybe I have a dog or a couple like maybe I have a pet gerbil and I
That
could
would do a lot. Yeah.
well, it cover it's a, take what you can get.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hurt them, but if they get past the slingshot, they're going down into the hole. It could potentially bruise them, but you also got to think like you have captured an ape man probably, unless their lower dimensional vibrations somehow give them powers that let them like fly.
Yeah, unless they like phase out of existence at the base of your fucking like trap
Yeah.
effectively is what this seems to be. This thing seems another fucking person just went over
Why
the barrier.
why do that?
I really don't know.
That person is also speeding down the parking lot. Indianapolis drivers, fucking grow up.
Yeah, I don't know if this makes for good podcasting or not, but
I don't care.
I'm literally staring out the window as we're
That's
recording.
insane. I didn't see the initial entry. That people, come on.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. If you're in Indianapolis listening to this show, figure it out.
Just use their fucking entrances. Why are you driving over concrete
Fucking
grass
crazy.
barriers? Anyway, yeah, I think kind of like a humane, safe way of kind of well, I mean, you are just flinging a creature across like so that
Okay.
it is less humane or it is like more humane than just straight up shooting it in the face.
Right.
But it
Well, I'm just okay. Like I'm assuming it'll be okay just because of the Bigfoot exoskeleton.
yeah, it's fair. And it'll probably be able to like grab some tree on the way down and like
Yeah.
kill it
Yeah.
and like keep itself from just splatting onto the ground. Um
Hopefully.
yeah. So that's a really good idea. I think that
Thank
is
you
the
for
most
saying
humane
so.
method.
You're
And I'm going to take a slightly different route.
Oh,
though.
you're gonna fucking
Uh
kill him?
well, I mean probably, but here's I think this is really the goat idea. And that
Okay.
is I'm going to take as much like liquid and like animal fat and stuff from like the provisions we brought with us and I'm going to make a fucking slip and slide
Okay.
out that will start at like the entrance to our cabin and go into the like off the cliff into the ravine below.
Oh, okay. So you're just making an ape death delivery
I
service.
am. I'm making a fucking like shoot for ape death
Oh my
here.
god.
Where they're gonna try to come in the main door. I'll use like the axe as like a bait, like for them to try to come in, and they're gonna slip. Like I'll put some banana peels at the front of it so they have something to slip on.
Axe is bait.
Yeah, well, they grabbed at the axe.
I guess in this story they did, but I
Yeah.
don't know whether ape men are specifically like all about axes. The one universal thing I know about Bigfoot is that he likes nuts and berries.
Well, if you're a lower dimensional vibrational being, do you actually have to eat? I don't know.
That's a
So,
good question. We don't know.
But I think regardless, even if you're lower dimensional, I think you will succumb to a slip and slide.
And you will succumb to the allure of a shiny axe.
Look, maybe I'll put some nuts and berries next to the axe. Give them their kind of dealer's choice. And I figure like we're gonna get these apes are gonna just one by one do some like whoa like slip and slide
Yeah.
like try to run on this stuff and
Like
eventually
a Scooby Doo.
yeah
Yeah.
and they'll just get eventually they'll just slide down and then get like they can do a cannonball off this 400-foot ravine.
Now what happens to the mailman?
Well, this isn't a place I'll really be receiving mails since it's like a log cabin in the middle of the woods that I'm not gonna stay in.
Okay.
But
What if
the
you-
mailman could also die if there were a mailman in this situation, and that's a risk I'm willing to
What
take.
if you encounter a youth group? And
Hey,
they just you're just inside doing your taxes or whatever, and they just all they all in like line up in a line, just go down the slip and slide into the ravine.
Then they shouldn't have come and tried to throw rocks at my cabin.
They were actually here to sell you cookies.
I have a no solicitation sign on my cabin,
They were here
so it's fair play.
to give you money.
It's a risk I'm willing to take.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, like
Just like a line of the youth group kids with wads of cash in their open arms. Just
hopefully when they slip,
lining up.
they'll throw the cash by
they
accident.
got a tight grip now.
Okay, they got a tight grip.
They got
on
a
it.
tight grip.
Well, that's sometimes you just sometimes you don't end up with the cash,
That's if so you want to be a millionaire has taught me anything, it's that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really the kind of Bigfoot equivalent of getting to that like $500,000 question and whipping it. So
And then you
get
send
nothing.
about a dozen children with wads of cash in their arms into a ravine to their deaths.
Yeah. I think honestly doing that is less likely than sending 3 big feet to their death.
We should do that with game shows. It's like hey, all your cash that you can win is in the hands of these orphan children.
Yeah.
And if you fuck this game up, I don't even want to tell you what we're going to do to these kids.
It's the
They're gonna
saddest
die.
version of Deal or No Deal I've ever heard of. Instead of like models, they have just children holding the briefcases.
Yeah.
And you don't want to know what happens if you lose.
We're the only game show that liquidates children.
This is for our sequel to Running Man. That's the movie I was trying to think of.
Yeah,
it's
we're I think in the next couple years we could get a game show like this kind of going. If not children, there will be human death involved. It'll be fun for the whole family.
I am waiting for the first game show that legalizes like actually injuring people. It feels like we're not that far off.
No, we're getting there.
So
soon.
Yeah, this is.
Look forward to it.
I think that kind of wraps us up for the week.
Yeah.
So if you want to, let's go and take care of some business.
Yes.
If you want to find us on the internet, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, we're probably on there. Just look up It Gets Weird.
Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. What's grinding your gears? Tell your favorite comedy podcast all about what's pissing you the F off right now.
Especially bad drivers.
Yeah, especially bad driving. We'll have a bone to pick corner.
Is someone entering your parking lot incorrectly?
Oh, you weren't asking me.
No, that's a general question for the listening.
Yeah, email us about that. It'll be really great, and we'll definitely read it on the show.
We'll have a special episode where we just read all the replies we got to that.
All the replies about bad driving. We're gonna keep the bad driving.
Hey Kyle, why were our episodes for this 1 week? Why were all our listens for this week like 2? Oh, that was our special bad driver call-in episode of our conspiracy podcast.
That'll be a fun episode. Everybody look forward to it. So yeah, email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Sweet sustenance for us. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. Look, if you want access to all the cool bonus episodes we do about shitty driving, because that's exclusively what we talk on our Patreon. You'll want to donate to It Gets Weird on Patreon. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, every other week, we are recording episodes of It Gets Weird TV. We're talking about the weird television show, Gravity Falls. And at the $5 tier, you get that show plus another show on the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. That's like run by me or Nile and sometimes Garrett if we can swing it. And whether you donate at the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. You get access to our Discord. And it's just I don't even know how much content it is. It's so fucking much. We have well over 100 episodes worth of bonus content. Like at this point, I don't even know
at this point it really is. It's a lot.
It's a ton. Hours and hours of content on there. And then we also have a $1 tier where it's just a tip. You don't get anything out of it. You're just saying, hey, I like your show. Thanks for doing what you do. Here's $1. Check it out. And if you can't donate to us, go ahead and tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Nile.
And I'm Kyle signing out.